Yeah. So good morning, Derek. How are you?
Good morning, Chris. Very well. Just had a good breakfast.
Super, same here. This is going to be a most interesting talk because obviously, Derek, I've been treating you sometimes for quite a few problems, but the main emphasis on here is to talk about how deep oscillation therapy has definitely affected you in certain ways. Just a wee bit of background. Derek and I first met in December 2015, believe it or not. And the first four treatments that we had between us were probably what you call manual therapy. We didn't really introduce oscillation therapy till after the fourth session. And since then, it has had a great effect amongst the other treatments we give as well. Derek first talked about his acne being very different in May 17, and in September 17 also said it was still making a great effect, which to me was a secondary thing because I hadn't set out to change anything like that. So since then, seeing Derek regularly, probably every 5 weeks, would you say, Derek? Something
Yes.
like that. I have personally noticed great improvements in him, and obviously Derek will also tell you how he's going on. So this morning I'd like to let Derek tell the world about how he's been getting on. Over to you, Derek.
Hi. So, yes, I had two hip replacements, 2005 and 7. And you'd think that you'd get decent physio after that. And I didn't. And the person who gave me two super operations was never really interested in physio, which I think is a shame because it's about the operation. And I was increasingly aware of the fact that I was leaning forward when I walked. And as a result of that, somebody said, why don't you go and see Chris Boynes? And I did. And ever since, I have been getting more and more and more upright. That was my objective. To my surprise, I found that in the process, when I was better able to sit and to move left and right, to sit properly in a car seat and those sorts of things, I began to notice a series of changes. But the most significant one, in the terms of this conversation, I think, is that I could notice that when I turned left and right, turned my head left and right like that, I could feel the muscles in this part of my face moving. And slowly but surely, I found that this part of my face over the last 3 years has lost the acne. Now, I had acne from the age of 13, badly, so badly that when I went to school in the morning, I first of all had half an hour's treatment on my back. And I played an awful lot of sport. It was all very successful, except insofar as the best sport for me was running, because it's the only one that didn't involve too much contact. And my back and my chest still have the scars of those days. So I had really bad acne. And I noticed that obviously so many people who have acne get it in the back of their neck. And I noticed that every time Chris made an improvement, and so one of my vertebrae or musculatures let go, and you get a sort of clunk in your body when that happens. I'm sure everyone's familiar with it. I'd find that I'd follow on with a dose of acne in the back of my neck. And as the years progressed, and I noticed it by 2017, so that's 2 years, I found that my acne was directly associated with a change in my body position because I'd become more loose, more supple. And as a result of that, I began to realize and talk to Chris about how lumpy the back of my neck was getting. And it was only after that that I realized that the muscles in my face were moving, and therefore I no longer got anything like as much acne just around here. And in the last 3 years, as it were, all the, if I say outstanding acne in my face has come out of my skin, and my face is now softer. It's much easier to shave. There are all sorts of direct advantages that I'm absolutely clear are to do with being less uptight muscularly. And I was seriously uptight muscularly from 13 to 18 at school. And I can recognize the deep relief in comparison. So I can do so many things now, so much better. And I've developed a routine as to how I get up in the mornings. And that involves a series of quite small but deeply significant exercises. And the result of that is that when I now sit in the car, I can easily look round and see cars coming from my right and left, which I couldn't before because the muscles in my back just wouldn't allow that. But also my head goes further round, and it's continuing to do so. So I'm not planning to stop my treatment with Chris because I get such enormous benefit from it. And also it makes sure that I don't overdo a situation, because one of the problems of changing from being a stiff old fellow to being what I am now is that every time you move something, effectively you bruise yourself. Your muscle, when it goes ping, is slightly bruised, and you've therefore got to consolidate the advantages of that, let the bruising go away, and also re-establish for the muscles a new think, so that instead of walking the way I always used to walk, I consciously now walk with my hands behind my back. And I consciously do this sort of thing when I'm walking. Well, I couldn't do that before. So it's actually made such an enormous difference.
Good.
And I've got back to the same length of stride I had. And of course, you can measure that by walking on pavements in London, because I do 2 strides to 3 paving stones. And it's a thing that I knew I used to do when I was 17. So I'm heading back without the strength that I used to have, but I'm getting back to a proper suppleness of an 18-year-old.
Yeah. So Derek, if I may, how do you feel after you've had the oscillation? Because we tend to do the oscillation for about 40 minutes because it has a greater effect. How do you actually feel after the oscillation?
I feel terrific after the oscillation, and I feel always I feel tired the next day.
Yes.
I say I've been Chris Boyned. You know, I know I'm expecting it, and I would be surprised if I weren't. But I also know that the reason I go to Chris is because he takes me in my body. He's teaching my body to go a bit further than it used to.
I mean, the interesting fact is that I've noticed from using oscillation now for many years is that if there's no doubt about it, that if you're under 50, should I say, generally people feel that the changes straight away, and they're generally very good. Over 50, of which I am also in that case, or older, it sometimes feels as though you've had a bit of a battering, to put it mildly, though not horrible. But then the 12, 24 hours later, it's always better. Would you say that's similar to what you feel, Derek?
Well, you haven't told the truth, in the sense that I'm 74, heading 75.
No, you're not. Yeah.
Oh, I am. And that this change at my age obviously takes so much longer.
Yes.
But I couldn't half recommend it for the 15-year-old just as much as I recommend it for the 75-year-old.
I mean, because I've worked with oscillation now for many years, and I know it pretty well. I know what it can do and how it can adapt. But I still, 2015, Derek, it's a long time, but you have changed so significantly. And we've been meaning to talk about this for so long. But the acne behind the neck, across the occiput and down there, I mean, I've noticed a difference, though I never thought about it. But would you say that's still, it's just so much softer, isn't it? The skin is so much better.
Well, since I saw you three weeks ago, I've had a further movement in my left back, which means I can turn better.
Good.
Damn me, I instantly got a spot in my neck, which is what I expect to happen.
Yeah.
And to my astonishment, this time it was gone in 3 days. Oh, wow. Normally they're there for a long time. So the whole thing is more fluid and more pleasing. And I almost now say, well, I hope I'm going to get one of those, because it means I get an improvement.
That's great, because oscillation has not been looked at in detail with something like acne or research. But when I threw this to the various clever people over in Germany, they did say, yes, they couldn't see why it wouldn't work, but they haven't had time to look at it. And quite right. Is it making that the deep clefts where the stuff sits, is it moving it? Probably is. But
Yes.
we know that in terms of skin, treating all people with oscillation, it really is very effective. So
Yes.
thanks, Derek. That's it's really good to hear it.
I would like to add an extra thing. I am certain that if I'd had this treatment at the age of 15, it would have made me recognize how uptight I was.
Wow.
And because it hurts, you get more uptight. And so it extrapolates. And therefore, you start feeling, gosh, and I'm ugly to all the girls because and so on. And then when people touch you, you say, no, don't. People used not to touch me because they knew when they did, it hurt me. These are, other fellows at school.
Yeah, it would be very interesting.
But one recognizes the tightness, and if you're, and I'm sure it would, your process, I'm sure would be an enormous benefit to schools.
I mean, that sounds, I mean, Derek, believe me, my friend, that sounds really good. And it would be lovely to get 3 of the same age as yourself, perhaps with the same problems to do, and then maybe do it with the youngsters. But we'll see. But the whole point of this very good interview with you, or just natter with you, is just to let folks know that oscillation, it really, there's very good research, but you're proof. But I have to also say that your exercise, your attitude to it and everything, Derek, they're all very, very important factors. And some of my manual therapy, my needling, my other bits that I do, but the oscillation just seems to have taken it to a different level, which I'd never thought of. So thank you.
Well,
great.
Do be reassured, I have been having people looking at my back since the age of 18.
Yes.
And I've had all the needles, and I've had all this, and I've had all that. And the point about the oscillation is it really lets your body go so that it knows that it's doing it better this way than the previous way. And the other systems don't.
Yes. And just to let the folks know who are obviously going to hopefully listen to this, when we do the oscillation with you, it's via my gloves, and literally it's from head down to pelvis. So there's very good coverage of all your tissue and joints. So yeah, very good. Okay, Derek.
Would you like to know what exercises I do every day?
Absolutely, that's super. You're very good.
Very quickly, when I clean my teeth, I stand on my feet, on my toes. When I shave, I then go to the bottom step of a stair so that I go on my feet on the bottom step and go beneath the step and then above the step. Then when I put cream on the heels of my feet, I put my foot right up on the basin and put my hand under my heel. I've been trying to do that since November when the idea occurred to me, and I can now do it reliably. And lastly, I sit on the loo with a box on my feet so that I'm in this sort of position. And let's just see. Yes. And then when I'm in the shower, I put my hand on one head and push my pelvis forward.
Good man.
Doing it in the heat of the shower means your back's relaxed.
Yeah, that's great. And also for the therapists who hopefully will listen to this, Derek, when he first walked into the clinic, was like the brick wall, which is on the outside of the house here. And he had lack of neck extension, shoulder extension, thoracic extension, lumbar extension, hip extension, because as Derek said, I don't think anyone had really looked at those movement problems. But now they're all better. So anything else to add, sir?
Oh, as a result, I love you dearly, but I don't like admitting that in public.
You're such a crawler. Right. Yeah. Derek, listen, thanks for your time. It's really good. I'm going to see you soon anyway. So thank you very much again. Great stuff.
My pleasure. I hope
have a nice family dinner. Lunch.
Lunch. Yeah.
Take care. Bye.
Bye-bye.